My name is Margaret Whitmore. I'm 69 years old. Apparently, and Sharon Hi, and with sex to work. And before you ask, yes, I've been called everything. Mommy, dear grandma, how severe, how not generous soul. Until the day they called me dead weight. Have you ever been humiliated by those you raised with love? Have you ever felt that they only treat you well while you pay the bill? The truth is that no one expects to be betrayed at their own table, much less for the family. But it was exactly there, among silver cutlery and expensive plates that I bought myself, that I understood. I was just the pocket of the house, not the mother, not the mother-in-law, only the wallet. Now, and if you've ever felt used, invisible, or deceived by those who should love you, you're not alone. I know what it's like to give yourself entirely, and, in the end, can't be forgotten like an old piece of furniture. It seems exaggerated, no, but it is not. Today, I'm going to tell you how it all fell apart and how I turned the tide. You will see how silence can be stronger than any scream, and what justice. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a key on the table. They toasted, calling me a joke. I left, leaving everything in silence, and I took everything from them. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. Sometimes it's in the silence of a dinner party that we discover everything. It was that night, at that table, that my daughter-in-law raised a glass and said with a venomous smile, "Here is to Margaret, the mother-in-law who pays for everything but has never been a real mother." The guests laughed. My son lowered his eyes. And me? I just put a key in the center of the table. A key and a ticket. He read, "One, only choke out. Then I'd see." And it turned white. "Mom, tell me you didn't do it." "I did." "Well, and more than that. Oh, I planned in silence. No anger, no scandal. Wow. Because when a woman like me is silent, it's because you've already decided. And if this story has already squeezed something inside you, if it reminded you of some wound that no one sees, then I invite you to stay with me. Leave your like. Subscribe here. Not for me, but for all of us who were mocked at dinner time, but got up from the table harder than ever. It's hard to tell all this, but it is more difficult to store alone. So stay with me, well, because now I'll show you how I got everything out of them. I've always had a simple routine. Now, after my husband Hank passed away, that big house in Charleston was filled with silence, but never of sadness. I filled the spaces with flowers. I tended my garden every morning, planted begonias in the summer and violets in the spring. He made a point of keeping the balcony clean, the windows open, and the smell of apple cake around the kitchen on Sunday afternoons. Loneliness. I learned to talk to her. I never complained. I occupied myself as best I could. I read to children in the neighborhood library, helped older ladies organize their retirement papers. That's how alive I felt. Daniel, Colleen, my only son, came to see me from time to time, Oh, always in a hurry, always with some bill in hand. Mom, I say, car insurance went up this month. Oh, or Mom, honey, listen to you now. Ashley is thinking about going back to school. Can you help with enrollment? And I helped. I have always helped. Not because it was an obligation, but because inside me there was this idea that love was proven with support. I didn't know how to say no. In fact, I didn't even want to say no. Each check I signed was, for me, a way of saying, Imna, Ann, am I so okay now? Am still useful. Am still family. One time said what you might out to her. Instead one tactic us to down. When Daniel and Ashley got married, I paid for almost everything. The dress, the buffet, the salon rental. The party was beautiful. At the Shem Creek Pier, I remember how Ashley thanked me. You are like a mother to me. That melted me. I believed it. In time, on their own, she was so desire. They moved into a nice house in Mount Pleasant. House I bought, of course, in the beginning. Oh, it was all affection and gratitude. Ashley would send me pictures of the tidy house, say she was learning how to cook my recipes. I felt included. Wow. I felt needed. Now. But over the years, something has changed. The tone of the calls, the frequency of visits. Wow. The hugs began to fade. The messages became lists of requests. And the sweet words came only when there was something to be paid. It took me a while to realize. You know, when you truly love, you cover your eyes. You choose to believe that the other feels it too. The grandchildren were born. First Caroline, then Josh. Oh, how I loved those children. In the beginning, wow, Silky and Hesha, artist town. They came every weekend. They played in my backyard. I had a picnic with me. But then, no, they were busy. There's football. There's ballet. There's a test. And disappeared. And I kept the memories. I kept drawings they gave me. Notes with crooked words. I still have them all in a blue box in my closet. One day, I went to their house by surprise. I took brownies. I rang the doorbell and waited. But no one answered. Minutes later, I saw through the car window. They were inside. Down. Ashley saw me and turned her face away. I left with a full tray. That night, I left the brownies in the library for the kids on the afternoon shift. And there's a time when we notice, accordio umstere, which is not forgetting. It's choice. And now, listen to me, please, because I want to ask you a question that hurts me a lot, but needs to be said. Have you ever felt that they only look for you when they need something? That the love you offer has become convenience for others? If you've been through this, comment below with just a "I've lived that" or "it touched me." It may seem small, but for those who have already been silenced, a comment is a hug. Still, ow. At that time, I pretended I didn't see it. I clung to the hope that it was just a phase. After all, everything I did for love. I paid for the children's private school. I checked into Ashley's Jeep when she said she was tired of an old car. I even bought a Christmas present for her in-laws because she said she was out of money, and I thought that was beautiful. You know, help keep the family together. I did it with pleasure, but I started to notice a pattern. Whenever I said, "I can't now," silence came. They disappeared. They didn't answer. Well, yeah. And all I had to do was transfer the money. And that's it. The hearts turned in the messages. The thank you, Mommy. The invitations to dinner. Wow. It was as if their love had a price. It was during this time that I began to write in my diary. At dawn, while the fan blew in the empty room. Maybe I have created dependency, not theirs in me, but I in them. Because when you spend years being everything to others, there comes a time when you forget to be something to yourself. But I still had faith. I believed that, deep down, they loved me. They were just going through difficulties. They were just distracted. I would rather think that, until the day they invited me to dinner. Ashley said it would be a special night just for us. I dressed neatly. I took expensive wine. I prepared souvenirs for the grandchildren. Do you know when the heart wants to believe that there is still room for you? That maybe, just maybe, they're seeing you again? But when I arrived at that house, something in the air is already different. The decor, the way they received me, the quick glances among the guests, as if I were just a prop there. Something told me that night was not for me. But what happened at that table, when the glasses rose, I never forgot that, because there, in that toast, I didn't just lose my family. I lost the illusion. Do you want to know what they said? What made me swallow that night like it was a bitter dessert? So stay with me, because what came after the toast? It was the beginning of the end. After that dinner, I confess, I started to pick up the pieces, not the pieces of the night, yet, but those of the before. I began to remember the little things that, on their own, seemed normal. But together they formed a sad puzzle. Like when Ashley stopped answering my messages. First, there were delays. Then, dry answers, until one day it simply disappeared. When I asked Daniel if everything was okay, he said, no, she's busy. But busy with what? The house. I was the one who paid. The car was my name. The children's school. My account. The old town. What did she do all day? When I tried to talk, Daniel said that I was exaggerating. That I should stop taking everything personally. And do you know what hurts? It's just that I started to believe, doubting myself. I thought maybe I was really being too sensitive. At Sunday dinners, which were once the happiest moment of my week, I became an extra. My dishes were praised, yes, but with that obligation tone. My stories about the time Hank and I started our company from scratch, or about how Daniel learned to swim at age 5, were interrupted with forced smiles or changing subjects. Oh, Alina, Nefsikid so do why? Oh, but dear, mother-in-law, how you stayed sick tabda. What's a re? You've already told you that. That shrunk me inside, but I smiled. No, too, because a mother smiles, even when her heart tightens. One day, I suggested a family trip. I thought I could bring us closer. One year, but I need to tell. I wanted to take everyone to Vermont in the fall, to see the red leaves falling. Ashley replied, "Mm, maybe it's not the time for that kind of thing anymore." The phrase echoed, that kind of thing, as if being with me had become nuisance. I looked at Daniel at the time. He didn't say anything. He just kept stirring the salad. And the grandchildren. Ah, the grandchildren barely looked up from their cell phones. Caroline even rolled her eyes when I asked about the school. And Josh, he answered me with a dry ahem when I asked about the basketball team. Those two that I carried in my lap, that I taught how to make cookies and told stories until they fell asleep. Now they didn't even have the patience to listen to my voice. Deep down, I knew something was changing, and it wasn't just their adolescence. It was the space I occupied there, or the space I no longer occupy. Gradually, I became a detail. And you know what's the worst part? It's just that we realize, before it hurts, nuance you. We already know. Just pretend you didn't see it. He pretends it was just a bad day. A bad answer. Mundi. We sopanda. Some forgetfulness. But the heart. Ah, the heart is not mistaken. I began to notice that the invitations were decreasing. The messages disappeared. They only remembered me when the rent was due, when the school tuition arrived, when the car's IPVA knocked on the door. Other than that, silence. I was no longer the fun grandmother, nor the dear mother-in-law, and I was the woman who solved it, the one that banked, the one that kept things going, but that no one wanted to hear. And yet, I didn't stop. Now, I continued to help. I continued to bring dessert on Sundays, even without knowing if anyone would thank you. He kept sending cards on their wedding anniversary. I kept giving myself, as if each act was an attempt to regain a space that, deep down, I already knew I had lost. One night, I sat alone in the kitchen, with a cup of tea in my hand, and wrote in my notebook, when did I stop being a mother or the child and become an employee? But I tore it up soon after, because it seemed ugly to think that. It seemed bitter. My NATO, I am still but it wasn't. It was just truth, the kind of truth you hide from yourself so you don't fall apart. But, you see, I'm not one to make drama. My city Verschound, I said. I never was. I am a woman to hold firm, to solve, now, to endure in silence. How? But at that stage, something began to die. inside me. And it wasn't just sadness. It was dignity. I am only so sad. Was dignity. And when a woman starts to lose that, what's left? But before the last petal fell, dinner came. That night, that sentence, that key on the table, and what I did next. No one expected it. Do you think you've seen everything a mother can handle? Then wait until you hear what came next. Because the next scene, there's no turning back. Ashley called me on a Tuesday morning, in that sweet voice she only used when she wanted something. Margaret, we are preparing a special celebration here at home, Saturday night. We would love for you to come. It will be intimate, only for those who really matter. Wow. I heard that phrase and immediately, I pray, well, no, now. My heart raced. It was close to my birthday. And for a moment, just for a moment, I thought, did they remember? Could it be that, after so many silences, so many signs of distance, they decided to surprise me? I wanted to believe. How I wanted. I spent the next few days taking care of every detail. I chose my navy blue dress, the same one I wore to Daniel's wedding, because it made me feel beautiful. I brushed my hair, bought a Chilean wine that Ashley always said she loved, and prepared a small photo album to give as gifts to her grandchildren, with memories of their childhood. Safe drawings, notes I wrote on birthdays, things that only a grandmother would keep. On Saturday, well, I went with a warm heart and a childish hope in my chest. But it was enough for me to enter that house, to feel the cold. The atmosphere was different. The voices, the looks, everything seemed out of place. There was no reference to my presence. Not a plaque, not a candle, not a gesture. The house was full of Ashley's friends, faces I didn't know, young people. Shout, one passage lively, loud music, mild. No one greeted me intimately. Daniel saw me and waved from afar. Without getting up, I was received as a distant neighbor, not as the woman who helped build all that. They put me at the end of the table, alone, while the others laughed, toasted, passed dishes to each other. Oh, window. I tried to start a conversation with the girl next to me, but she barely heard me. She seemed more interested in posting stories than noticing me. The food, which Ashley always said she made a point of preparing with my special touch, this time was all bought, industrialized, and the cake, it was chocolate, the only flavor I've never liked. When Ashley asked me years ago which cake I wouldn't eat even out of courtesy, I said, nah, chocolate, that's too strong, makes me sick. And there it was, a triple dark chocolate cake, topped with ganache. I smiled. I can. But inside, something began to break. I was there, but it was not expected. It was tolerated, invited out of obligation, or worse, used as decoration. And it was when the speech began that everything was revealed. Ashley climbed up a small ladder, narrow and calm, tapped a glass with a spoon, and said, I would like to thank everyone for coming, especially my mother-in-law, who, despite everything, is always with us. Thank you for playing so many moments. Really? Really? There was laughter. Nah. Short, uncomfortable laughter. Wasted gel. But laughs. I felt naked. As if she had been unmasked without ever having lied. As if my presence was a ready-made joke. My eyes sought Daniel's. He dodged, and in that instant, I understood. The party wasn't for me. It never was. It was for her, about her, and maybe against me. Now. But what they didn't know was that I had also prepared something for that night. Something much more indigestible than that chocolate cake. And you want to know what it was that I put in the center of that table before I stood up in silence. So, stay with me. Because what came after that toast? Everything changed. I still remember the sound of the cutlery hitting the glass. That dry tinkling, like a doomsday hammer. Ashley stood up. Now, already a little too cheerful, with the posture of someone who thought she was making fun. I wanted to make a very special toast. To Margaret. Everyone looked at me. I smiled, kind of not understanding. She continued, the mother-in-law, who was never a real mother. But I always knew how to open my wallet. The hall fell into a mixture of laughter and silence. Those muffled, complicit giggles of those who think it's okay to make fun of someone they think is just an old woman. My son lowered his head. He said nothing. Oh, not enough. Ashley, no, nor a respect my mother. Nothing? The man I carried in my womb, who I cradled through feverish nights, who I helped to get up after the failure of my first job, was there, calm, immobile, and hesitated, as if the shame were mine. How? I looked around. No one seemed to notice the weight of those words. It was just a joke, right? Just a joke from ungrateful people. But there, to you. In that split second, something inside me died, and another was born. I straightened up in my chair. I picked up the bag slowly, without haste. Everything that is great happens in silence. I took out a gold key and a white envelope. I placed both in the center of the table, on top of the linen tablecloth that I had bought years ago for special houses like theirs. The key made a metallic noise. The envelope was sealed with red wax, a touch that my lawyer always said gave seriousness. I looked at Ashley and said, without raising my voice, "This is going to make more noise than me." And I leaned back. Daniel, with trembling hands, opened the envelope. He read it in a low voice. The words weighed in the air like lead. You have 30 days to vacate the property located in Mount Pleasant, Charleston. The assignment of use contract is officially closed. The house will be sold. Known. Ashley widened her eyes. That's a joke, isn't it? I smiled. Nice, son. No. This is a consequence. Daniel didn't say anything. He just held the paper as if it were a sentence. And it was. It was the sentence of my silence, of the silence that I screamed for years, from the absence of hugs, of presence only when the bill expired, of the laughter when the mother-in-law was convenient, and the contempt when the mother stopped serving. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just got up. I grabbed my bag. And, before leaving, he said a single sentence. What I gave was with love. What I'm taking out. It's out of respect. The door slammed behind me with a dull crack. Outside, the wind was cool. For the first time in a long time, I took a deep breath, and I felt whole. I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story with all the wounds on display. And if you are there, listening, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. It's not out of vanity. It's because I still have a lot in store to tell you. And who knows, his story also lives in some of these words. But don't think that everything was resolved that night. That key, it was just the beginning. Because the next day, I discovered something. Something Ashley and Daniel hid from me. Something that hurt more than any toast. Want to know what it was? So it is. Because the worst was yet to come. There are people who think that money falls from the sky. What an inheritance sprouts like a flower in spring. That having a nice house, new car, and private school for your children is just a matter of luck. But luckily I didn't wake up with me at 4 a.m. to review the budget. Luck didn't see me get down in boots on the mud of a construction site in the middle of winter. No, that was blood. It was sweat. It was a choice. Hank and I arrived in Charleston with 2 suitcases, an old coffee maker, and a damn desire to win. He, a third-generation American. Me, the daughter of Irish immigrants, raised in New Jersey between 3 brothers and a mother who ironed clothes. When we decided to come south, we had nothing, just the dream of opening a small home builder. We started with renovations, then small houses. Hank took care of the contracts. I took care of the numbers. And even without an accounting degree, I learned by force how to deal with taxes, cash flow, suppliers, unions. The office was our kitchen table. And when Daniel was born, I would set up a spreadsheet with him on my lap. Between feedings and crying, the first major work came in 1993, a series of townhouses in West Ashley. There were months of insomnia. I had to convince the bank, promise impossible deadlines, negotiate every penny of the budget. But it worked. The work delivered on time. The profit came, and with it, more contracts, more challenges, but in Cicata Bay, more sleepless nights. Hank said I had an eagle's nose. He believed in me in a way that made me believe too. And when he died, my world came crashing down. It was a car accident. Coming back from a meeting with a client, it was 1999. Christmas was coming, and I remember looking at the empty chair in the dining room and thinking, and now, my still no gosta come. How do I hold all this by myself? But I held on. By Daniel, though I'm calm. For me, now, for his memory, I never thought about getting married again. Pain became a companion. And work, my foundation. No, I continued to run the company. He went to the construction sites with a clipboard in his hand and rubber boots on his feet. I heard a lot of jokes from bricklayers, a lot of mockery from engineers who thought that a widowed woman didn't know how to rule. But I didn't need to scream. It was enough to show the account balance. And I showed it. My one contract after another. I was building what would be my son's future. I bought the house in Charleston, Michelle. I paid for the best school and went to Columbia in New York. Why, I sold a piece of land that Hank had bought before he died, just to pay for the 4 years of college. No debt, no loan. I said to myself, "Has going to have the life we didn't have." But the truth is, the more I gave, the less he saw, or maybe, the less he wanted to see. When Daniel graduated, he thanked me with a tight hug and said, now it's my turn to take care of you. I smiled, I believed. But what came after was a sequence of requests disguised as promises. Just this month, it's just a help for Ashley to finish the course. Mom, it's only until I get that job. The job never came, but the bills, those came every month. And I paid. He always paid, not out of obligation, but for love. But the love that is not seen becomes a weight, and the weight that is not shared becomes a burden, a lonely burden. And now I see double cut, sitting here, remembering all this. I think, how does anyone have the courage to make fun of the woman who built everything they have? How can one forget so easily those who gave up themselves to see the other grow? Maybe they never forgot. Perhaps they just never cared. And if you think that was the most painful part of the story, wait, because the day after that dinner, I got a call from my lawyer, and it eunuch's hard. And what he told me, how it took me off the ground. None. Want to know what it was? So don't get out of there, because the betrayal, unfortunately, was not over yet. I returned home slowly that night. I don't even remember the path. I only know that when I closed the door behind me, the silence embraced me in a different way. It was not the comfortable silence of someone who lives alone and has already learned to like herself. It was a humid, icy, almost hostile silence. I took off the earrings right there at the entrance. The shoes were left on the carpet. I walked to the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine, not the expensive one I took for them. A simpler one, the kind we save for when our chest tightens. I didn't eat. He didn't even want to. I sat down at the table, the same one where so many Sundays were celebrated with true joy. And I stayed there, facing the void. Now, I'm wide. I took the little black bag that I took to dinner. Inside it, in addition to the key I left on the table, there was another one, a copy. The key I never handed over, the one I kept as security, as an invisible bond between me and that place I helped build. I turned the key in my fingers. For a moment, I had a child, I wanted to cry, but no tears came out. I wasn't sad. Neri was soon. I was embarrassed from me, because for years I wanted to be loved by them so much that accepted crumbs as a feast. I was reducing myself, bending over, loud, erasing myself, while frustrated, thinking that this was proof of love. One night in a while, I remembered the first time Ashley called me Mom. It was one late afternoon at a baby store in North Charleston. She wanted an expensive crib, a set of imported trousseau. Mom, can you help me with this? I was moved by that word, mother. Until then, she had only called me Margaret. That mother sounded like a seal, as if I had finally conquered a place. Little did I know that it was just a disguise for a request, like so many others that would come later. Always with a sweet voice, always with promises of gratitude. And me? I said yes before I even heard the amount. Do you know what is more painful? It is not the contempt of others. It's our own negation. We see everything happening, but insist that it is not quite like that, which is our exaggeration, that they will realize. They will change, but they do not change, and we only wake up when the slap comes dry. In the middle of a toast, that night, I sat in the dark of the room with the key in my hands. I thought about everything that had been, and everything that would never be again. I went to the bedroom, and I sat in a calm, took a wooden box where I keep my old letters, photos, clippings, and I found a letter from Hank. He wrote to me when Daniel was 6 years old, and I was tired, feeling insufficient. Wow, he said, Wow, you are the backbone of this family. If one day they forget that, remember you. I read it as if it were written yesterday. And if you've come this far, how? Listening to my story, I ask you, stay a little longer. Wired, because what lies ahead, it's the part that pains me the most to remember, but also the one that freed me the most. Sometimes, life throws us into an abyss just to show that we still have wings. The morning after dinner, tired. My phone rang. I knew he was my lawyer. He said he needed to tell me something urgent, something he discovered in the documents of the house, something that, until that moment, I didn't even imagine. And what he revealed to me, everything changed. Want to know what it was? So listen to me on, because the betrayal had not yet come to an end. I woke up before the sun rose. The sky was still pale, and the wind beat against the window pane of the room with that sound that only Charleston knows. Between the whistling and the whispering, I sat on the edge of the bed and stayed there for a few minutes, with my hand on my chest. It was not sadness. It wasn't anger either. It was such sharp clarity that it almost cut through. I got up, made my coffee as usual, strong, without sugar, and went to the desk. I took out of the drawer the old business card of Charles Delaney, the family's lawyer for years. Charles was one of those men who never asked too many questions, but always did what was right. I called him. Charles. Nay, this is Margaret. I need you to file the eviction process. And there's more. What it's what still when he saw the grief. I want to cancel the additional cards. Everyone, including Daniel's, on the other side. Silence. Then, and understood. More. It will be done. I went to the bank personally. I said I wanted to cancel all automatic transfers to my son's CPF, close the credit lines in his name. Why? How? Moo? Lock down. Ashley's Jeep insurance. The attendant looked at me with a mixture of pity and respect. Are you sure, Mrs. Margaret? I looked him in the eye and said, I do. More than ever. Each signature, while each password typed on that icy keyboard. It was as if I was collecting back the pieces of me that I left scattered for love. Blind, mute, exploited love. I returned home in silence. I opened the closet, grabbed the blue suitcase I hadn't worn since 2008, and started folding some clothes. No exaggeration. A coat, 3 dresses, 2 pairs of shoes. I separated my favorite scarf, the one with shades of wine and mustard that Hank said matched my look. I got my passport, called the travel agency and bought a one-way ticket to New York. It had been 20 years since I had set foot there. Why? I wanted to see the building where it all began. Smell the bakeries in Brooklyn. Walk along the sidewalk where I pushed Daniel's cart in the first winters. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something for myself. It's funny to think about how we get used to living for others, to put aside one's own desires in the name of family, union, care. But no care is worth it when only you care. When loving becomes sustaining the selfishness of others. And at that moment, organizing that trip, I realized I still existed. I concepted now. I was still a woman, a daughter, Lindsay Hajnik Town, a widow, Wyan Sind, Lindsay Ahmed Halvana, a friend. I still dreamed. I still fit in myself. And look, if you've ever had to compose yourself in silence, if you've ever had to take firm steps when everything inside you trembled, then stop for a moment now and listen to me. We don't need to raise our voices to prove that we have value. Just get up. If this makes sense to you, comment below. I am a Branton here. The Nordstrom House and Sir Odd of Cigarettes. I understand you. Why? Is that it? Because New Times, reading that someone feels like us, it already warms our chest more than any beautiful word. While the blocking emails were being confirmed on my cell phone, I received a missed call notification from Daniel. Thrice. I did not return. He should call the bank now, or for the lawyer, Dylan, suggest in town, I'll controls to decide. I was too busy rebuilding what they tried to destroy. And this time, it wasn't the patrimony. Well, why? It was my piece. Later that day, well, I'm so top down. I went to the city library. I left an envelope with a cash donation and a letter. I asked them to use that to create a reading corner with my name. It was not vanity. It was a legacy. If I was going to cut down the rotten roots, I should at least plant a new tree in another soil. But the surprising part was yet to come. In the late afternoon, when I went to get my passport from the old document folder, I found a letter from Hank that I didn't remember. It was folded inside an old account book. His lyrics, steadfast, direct, and what he wrote there seemed to have been written exactly for that moment. Do you want to know what was in that letter? So stay with me, because those words changed everything that came after. The phone started ringing at 9 in the morning. First, it was a call from Daniel. Oh, I didn't answer. He insisted. No. I turned on the muffler and went to take care of my suitcase. I refused to start that day listening to the choked voice of someone who only comes to me when the world starts to collapse. And never when I'm about to collapse myself on the night. Then came the messages. Mom, what did you do? The card was refused at the station. I was with the kids. An hour later. Is this some kind of hoax? Say you didn't do that. At 11. Ashley called me. I didn't answer again. She sent audio. Her voice squeaky. Now, tearful. Nah. I knew you were bitter, but I didn't think you were cruel. No. Destroy your grandchildren's lives like this. Who does that? Margaret. Who are you? Anyway, I took a deep breath. I deleted the audio, and I went to the market. I bought flowers, not to give as a gift. I bought it for myself. Some pink peonies, those that wither quickly, but enchant just by looking at them. It had been years since I bought flowers for no reason. No, I always thought, oh, never mind. They're expensive, Leo. But there, I didn't want to save money. I didn't want to think about bills or about necessity. I just wanted to choose something beautiful. Because he deserved it. I stopped by the bakery and bought a cranberry and walnut bread, the kind Hank loved at the cafe. I walked home with the bag on my arm and the sun on my face. It was a light morning, and for the first time in a long time, I felt my body weightless. It was as if I'd finally returned the backpack I'd been carrying for decades, full of guilt, favor, fear of being abandoned. Oh, when I got home, there were more notifications on my cell phone. A message from the grandchildren. Caroline. Mom said we're going to have to leave our house. Why? Josh, Grandma, Kalkion. What's going on? It hurt me. Of course it hurt. But I knew that this pain was part of the process. That protecting a child does not mean lying to him. It means showing that choices have consequences, and that their grandmother was not an ATM, nor a piece of furniture in the living room. Why? It was people. And people get tired. I opened the door and went to put the flowers in the vase in the living room. when the landline rang. It was Charles. Margaret. The papers were delivered this morning. Daniel received it directly. Classic reaction. One can is your denial. One can external. Then shock. Then offense. But everything is within the law. Thanked. Turned off. Shortly after. Another missed call. Ashley. No. Then another. And another. Then, now, a message saying that he was going to expose everything on the internet. That she was going to tell the church, her friends, that I was a spiteful and selfish old woman. Yet, I laughed softly. I thought, funny. Selfishness. No. No custom. For these people, I did nothing so young. Is when we stop giving in, I knew that despair would hit. They have always lived with their hands outstretched and their eyes closed. I have warned gently so many times. You need to start standing on your own 2 feet. But they laughed. They changed the subject. They preferred the comfort of dependence. But too much dependence turns into abuse. And when those who support decide to leave the scene, the stage collapses. But you see, I didn't do anything out of revenge. None of these attitudes were motivated by anger. I just stopped. Is that it? I stopped feeding monsters. I stopped watering plants that never flowered. I stopped accepting that love needs to come with an invoice. I didn't have to shout or slam the door. I just turned the key, and I let the echo of silence do the rest. But the story is not over yet, because that night I sat in the armchair with tea in my hands and opened the letter I had found in the old book. A letter from Hank, and what he wrote there, it seemed to predict exactly what I would experience now. Do you want to know what that letter said? So, stay with me. Because in the words of those who have already left, I found the last push I needed to free myself for good. The trip to Colombia was silent. I did town, a car, the sea went home too. 3 hours on the road. One can't say clear skies, and a small suitcase in the back seat, like someone who goes light, but with a full soul. As I crossed the entrance to the city, my eyes were already looking for old places, as if they expected to find pieces of me scattered on the sidewalks. It was there that Daniel had studied. It was there that, so many years before, and I saw my son in a gown and cap, smiling as if the whole world could fit in his hands. I remember the pride when they said no town that we still watched the soaks out the nutry from the tightness in the chest of the certainty that everything I had done so far had been worth it. But now it all looked like a yellowed photograph, a portrait of illusions. I walked to the university campus. The buildings were almost the same. Some students were passing in a hurry, headphones in their ears, heavy backpacks on their backs. I sat on a bench in front of the old event hall, the same one where I took a photo with Daniel holding the diploma. And there, on that bench, I understood. I built everything expecting recognition, but I planted love where there was no root. They admired me for a while, maybe, but they never really saw me. And I spent years believing that if I loved more, they would learn to love me, too. But love is not taught. Love is felt. From there, well, I walked to an old coffee shop on the corner of Main Street and College Avenue. It was a place I frequented on my business trips, when I was still managing the construction company's contracts. I ordered my latte and a banana bread, the same way as always. I sat at a table in the back, near the window, where the sun beats down on the side. And it was there that I heard a familiar voice. "Margaret Whitmore, is that you?" I looked up and saw Alice. Gray hair, firm look. Wow, didn't I have to know? Smile with wrinkles. She was my friend in the difficult years after Hank's death. One of those women who is not afraid to look you in the eye and tell the truth. He sat down unceremoniously. We talked for hours. About time. Her grandchildren. My silences. I told him about dinner. Now, we sung. A silent K. From the key. From the envelope. Until my. With St. Charles down. She listened to me without interrupting. In the end, wow, he uttered the phrase that struck me like a thunderbolt. You cease to exist in your own history. Margaret, landed Sean, and only now has he realized. I was silent. I stirred it in the cup. The noise of the spoon against the pottery seemed to echo inside me. She continued, "How? Do you know what made me come back to myself? Look at myself in the mirror and ask, do I like this woman I see? Because if we don't even like us, why would others?" On the way back to the hotel, I stopped in front of a shop window. It was a ladies' clothing store. No, why still the coffee store? And on impulse, I joined. I tried on an off-screen dress. Elegant, moral, simple. Now in your tie. I am simple. I looked at myself in the mirror and liked. How long had it been since I liked what I saw? How long had it been since I only dressed to fit what others expected of me? That night, nearly before going to sleep, I wrote in my notebook, "Enough now." In my priority, there was no need to make a fuss, nor to declare war. It just needed to exist again, and to exist with dignity. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think, because when a woman like me speaks, even if quietly, there are many others who listen in silence. But the most curious thing is that, while I was finding myself again, I did it also. Daniel and Ashley were preparing the counterattack, and what they tried to do behind their backs, it was much dirtier than I could have imagined. Want to know what it was? So, stay with me, because the next discovery almost made me doubt everything. I was still in Colombia when the phone rang, with Charles' name on the screen. I answered calmly, thinking it was just some update on the eviction papers, perhaps some bureaucratic detail. But his voice came firm, low, blue, with a tone I'd only heard once when Hank died. "Margaret, we have a more serious problem than we thought. I need you to sit down before you listen." I was already seated. My heart didn't race, but my soul seemed to shrink a little. How? Ashley opened 2 credit cards, using her name as a guarantor, without your authorization, and he made several purchases in luxury stores in Savannah. I know well. Bags, shoes, perfumes, everything in your CPF. The debt already exceeds $30,000. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I saw myself going back to that dinner night. Her laughter, the mocking toast. And now, this, a robbery. It was no longer just contempt or ingratitude. It was a crime, and done with coldness, with calculation. Charles explained to me that he had already started the process of legal challenge to the debts, and that we had a way to prove that I never authorized anything. I listened to everything in silence, without crying. No anger, no, just a deep, dense sadness. I didn't tell what he told me 6 years ago. He didn't go. As if a part of me was dying for good, the one that still believed that, deep down, they had some love for me. No, just some love. I closed the call and stayed there, in the hotel bed, with my cell phone on my lap. The sun was beginning to set on the other side of the window, and I could only think of one thing. How do we get to this point? How is it that someone you raised, fed, I know now, welcomed, loved? Do you let someone else use your identity to adorn themselves while mocking your story? That was not just a financial fraud. It was a betrayal of the soul. I remembered a Sunday, years ago, when Ashley came to visit me alone, with a lemon cake she made herself. She was pregnant with Josh, and she seemed so sincere that day. She called me second mother. Hi. He said he felt safe knowing that I existed. He hugged me for a long time at the door. And now, I discovered that perhaps all of that was already part of a game where I was just a piece to be manipulated, used, discarded. That's it. This hurts more than any debt. But I didn't shrink. The next day, what did he? I returned to Charleston with a single thought. To solve everything cleanly. Charles said we could open a formal report, record the misuse of the data, and ask for damages. I authorized it without hesitation. I told him, it's not for the money, it's by name. For the respect they denied me. And it was at that time that I really understood. Sometimes defending yourself is the greatest act of self-love that a woman can do. And if you're still here with me, I tell you from the bottom of my heart that this story is not about revolt. It's about waking up. No, because the most memorable moment of my life was yet to come. And when he arrived, I didn't even imagine what I would be able to do. But before I could act on everything I had discovered, I received an unexpected visitor at my doorstep. How am I? And it was in this meeting, face to face, that the truth finally came out. And it wasn't pretty. Wanna know who it was? So stay with me, because the next chapter is where the tables start to turn for real. It was a gray afternoon, one of those in which the wind drags leaves across the balcony, as if the weather was trying to tell stories. I was watering my begonias when I saw Daniel's car park on the other side of the condominium gate. It was the same Jeep that I helped finance years ago, with installments that I took from my own livelihood. He hurried downstairs, hair disheveled, no, face downcast, and came walking quickly to the intercom. Touched. I could have ignored it. I could have left him there, but something in me, perhaps the mother who never dies, asked me to answer. I went to the balcony and unlocked the gate. He climbed slowly, with a strange gait, between guilt and despair. When he arrived, I offered coffee. He accepted. No, but I left the door of the house closed. I made a point of serving on the porch. I needed him to understand that. From then on, there were limits. He sat on the wooden bench in front of the table. And for a few minutes, he just stared, as if he didn't know where to start. She freaked out. Mom, Leo, Ashley, she can't stop crying. The children are scared. Caroline wants to know if she's going to change schools. Josh thinks you're sick, that you've gone crazy. And I was down, one come. I don't know what else to do. I heard everything, in silence, every word, every pause. It wasn't until after a while, when he started to justify himself, saying that he never meant to hurt me, that Ashley just wanted to help with the finances of the house, that he trusted. That's when I raised my hand, calmly, and he said, "No, Daniel, what hurts me is not that you needed me. I gave it with joy. No, what hurts me? It's just that you never defended me." He lowered his eyes. He tried to hide a tear. He said he was overworked. No, that work was bad. That Ashley always had a difficult temper. I heard it again, with the same serenity, until he was silent. And it was at that moment that I realized something profound. The silence he always had when they offended me. It was the same one he now offered to the children. The silence that hurts, that consents, that kills, little by little. I kept looking at him. It was my son, my only son. And in that haggard face, there still lived the boy who ran in the hallways of our first house, who wrote a letter to me on Mother's Day at the age of 7, saying, "You are my everything." But that boy had been gone for a long time. The man before me was another, a man who chose to be silent. He chose to turn his face. He chose to accept the comfort of omission. And, there are memories that mark us so much that they never leave us. Some hurt, others heat up, and others, like this one, simply transform. How? I know that you who are there listening to me also have a memory that has changed something inside you. So tell me in the comments, which memory has stayed with you until today? One of those that, from time to time, comes back out of nowhere and squeezes their chest. Right here. I remember this, or I've experienced something like this. Sometimes sharing relieves. Daniel looked at me as if expecting a hug, as if the fact that he came to me was enough to erase everything. But I just got up, grabbed his cup, and said, You've got 18 days. Use it well, to look into your children's eyes, to teach Ashley what responsibility is, and to remember who you are, because the time for apologies is over. He did not answer. How? He got up, walked in silence to the gate. Before leaving, well, she turned to me and said, sorry, Mom, I just closed the gate. And I did. But what I didn't know, it's just that his visit was just the beginning. Because the next day, a person I never expected showed up at my door. And what she brought, it shook until what I thought I had already buried. Want to know who it was? So it is. Now. Because now, the wound is bleeding again. They arrived with timid steps, almost as if they were entering a strange house. Caroline, with her arms crossed and her headphones hanging around her neck. Josh, eyes downcast, kicking an invisible pebble on the balcony floor. I opened the door with a smile and said, Come in, my loves. I made cookies like I used to. Hot chocolate, too. They entered slowly, as if treading on new territory, although it was the same carpet, the same sofa, the same bookshelf full of photos of them small. But the weather, the atmosphere was different. I sat them both at the kitchen table, as I did on Christmas Sundays. I had placed the plates with the cookies still warm, and the smell of vanilla filling the air. Josh was the first to pick one up. Caroline took her time, but after a while, she also gave in. We stood there, chewing in silence for a few minutes. It was a different, tense silence, full of unspoken questions. Grandma, Caroline began, staring at the cup of chocolate. Did we do something wrong? I looked at her calmly. What? I need sudden Neptune, adjusting the apron on my lap. No, honey, you are just children, and children are not to blame for adult choice. She took a deep breath, as if she had been holding that air for days. It's just that. Mommy's strange, and Daddy keeps saying that you're sick, that you're confused. But you look so normal. You're not sick, are you? The question hit me like a stone in the chest, but I kept calm. News. No, honey, I'm not sick. Not bad. I opened my eyes, and when we open our eyes, we see things that we used to pretend we didn't see. Josh dropped the cookie halfway through. Dad said we're going to have to leave our house, that it's your fault. I sighed. I grabbed my cup, took a slow sip. The house where you live is mine. She was presented with a lot of affection, but with one condition that her parents forgot: respect. And, more than that, responsibility. They grew up thinking that they would always have everything, effortlessly. It is synonymous, and the world doesn't work like that. Caroline got up, noon. Walk to the living room furniture, where there is a photo of her on my lap, with a red bow on her head. Still a baby. He stared at the photo for a few seconds. Then it turned to me. Mom, lead to us. Right? I swallowed. No, time did Shoo. I got up slowly. No board you touched it down. I got up slowly, walked up to her, and touched her shoulder. She, and then did omitted. She told the parts that mattered to her. And now, now he needs to face what he hid. Caroline's gaze was too mature for a 14-year-old girl. I knew something was wrong. Nobody gets mad at someone who has only helped their whole life. That dismantled me from the inside, but it also filled me with hope. Because there, at that moment, I realized that it was possible to break the cycle. That maybe I hadn't lost everything. That if I spoke truthfully, I could leave something more valuable than inheritance. Conscience. My loves. I said, are you sitting with them in the room? You will always be welcome here. Always. But my house is no longer the place where people lie to keep up appearances. Here, I sometimes I had a nice we tell the truth, and the truth, sometimes it hurts, but it also liberates. Josh leaned his head against my shoulder. Went down. Caroline was silent. The three of us stayed like that for a while, the afternoon passing slowly by the window. When outside, the leaves were falling. Inside, it was as if the root of a new kind of love was beginning to sprout. They stayed a while longer. Now, shouted you a while. They laughed at a memory of last Christmas. Caroline asked if there was still that board game we always played. I rescued it from the shelf. Play. And for a few hours, we were just grandmother and grandchildren. No guilt, no dispute, no manipulation. Before they left, Caroline hugged me tightly. She said softly in my ear, "Thank you for telling the truth. I knew you weren't the villain." After they left, I sat on the couch for a long time, with teary eyes and a calm heart, because sometimes the most beautiful justice is the one that happens without shouting, only with truth. But the next day, the silence was broken in a brutal way, and this time, it wasn't a visit. It was a subpoena delivered by hand, and the name written on the paper. It was mine. Want to know what was there? Stay with me, because the lowest blow was yet to come. The morning after the conversation with my grandchildren, I went to Charlotte's office with a blue briefcase in my hands. Inside it were documents that carried more than letters and signatures. They carried the weight of a lifetime of concessions, of swallowed silences, of love given without measure and respect received with limit. I sat in front of him, as I had so many other times. But that morning, I wasn't the frail widow asking for help. I was the woman who decided, finally, to own herself. I want to officially register the end of the lending of Daniel's house, and I also want to end any and all financial connections with them. Without exception, Charles nodded. Moo. He did the procedures with the skill of someone who has known me for decades. In a few hours, the records were published in official newspapers and portals. I sent copies by email with the title, Legal Communication, End of the Lending Contract. No personal ticket, no outburst, only documents that they would speak for me. That same afternoon, I logged into the bank's app. I canceled the automatic debit of the energy bill of that house. I removed Daniel's name from my health plan. I closed the accesses of the additional cards. I did everything without hesitation, not out of revenge, but for self-love. It was like closing an old house that was once home, but now only accumulated dust and pain. And then I opened another folder, the one that had been kept for years, with loose notes about an old dream. Visiting the Grand Canyon. Hank and I talked about it when we were still young. We planned to rent one of those travel vans and camp out looking at the Arizona sky. Life, as always, ran over fantasy. Wow. But now it was different. Now, I didn't have to wait for anyone anymore. I went to the website, booked a ticket with departure in 2 weeks. I chose a simple hotel, but with a view, and for the first time in many years, I felt light. After booking, I went to the website of the Women Rise Strong Foundation, which supports women over 60 in the process of starting over. I remember the first time I heard about them. It was a newspaper article with a lady who had been abandoned by her children and now lived with dignity in a small community in Asheville, North Carolina. That never left my head. I donated a significant amount, more than they expected. Why? With a single instruction. Wow. Use it to restore women who have forgotten who they were. And while clicking on Confirm Donation, a tear came down. But it was a sweet tear of relief. I also started planning my move. I virtually visited a little house in Asheville. 2 bedrooms, wooden balcony. Wooden balcony. A small garden with space for lavender and hydrangeas. It was all I needed. Nothing more, nothing less. And when I closed the online visit with the broker, I felt like I was finally stepping out of an invisible cage. That house would not be an escape. It would be a new beginning. That night, I went to sleep with my soul in peace. There were no more secrets, no ties that bound me to what diminished me. Only, in the middle of the night, my cell phone vibrated. A short, cold message from an unknown number. And when I read, I knew that the real test was yet to come. Do you want to know what was written? So, stay here, because even silence has its price. The cell phone vibrated so much that morning that it seemed to tremble with the same anger as the voice on the other end of the line. I had just left the pharmacy, heading home with a packet of chamomile tea and a new book on gardening. When the call came in, how they said will account when you're not out. Ashley, my thing out down. I took a deep breath, answered, how? And what I heard, it was not an apology. What an apology. It was desperation, naked and raw. Margaret, Neil, how could you do this to us? The card has been cancelled. I was at the Target checkout with a full cart. The car? The car is being collected. They said that the leasing is in their name, and that it will be resumed in the coming days. This is crazy. You have gone crazy. I let her speak, to scream, to cry. When I realized that there was no intention of dialogue, only despair and guilt disguised as an attack, I hung up. I knew she'd call again, and he did, more than 10 times that day. Then came the audios, some with a soft voice, trying to move me, now others with fury and offenses, throwing words like knives. One of them I will never forget. Her voice cracked with anger, saying, "There now, you are got bad. She's an ungrateful old woman. It was only good when it paid for everything." I sat on the porch of my house, put my cell phone next to the vase of lavender, and stared at the sky as if looking for an explanation. But deep down, I already knew. The facade had fallen. The polite smile at dinners, the birthday messages with a little heart, the thank you, mother-in-law after each gift. It was all part of a role play. And now that the fountain has dried up, the mask has fallen. Later, I received a call from Charles. He let me know that he had received an email from Ashley's lawyer, a veiled threat. They said that if I did not reconsider the eviction decision, she would consider going to the press, alleging abandonment of an elderly woman, psychological manipulation, and even patrimonial abuse. Charles laughed, with that laugh of someone who has seen many desperate people invent stories. "We've taken care of everything, Margaret. All documents are registered. There is die. You have health reports, public declarations of donation. Well, she has nowhere to run. And, that's when a chip fell on me. Oh, they went just mad at the financial loss. They were panicking about losing control. For the first time, I wasn't predictable. For the first time, my generosity could not be used as emotional blackmail. And this, for those who feed on power, modern, is unbearable. That night, I sat in the living room with my brown-bound notebook, the same where, years ago, I wrote down recipes and payment reminders. Now, I wrote something else. I wrote, "I am more than I was useful. I am more than I was present. I am, and if you're still here with me, listening to this story, I ask you something from the bottom of my heart. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe telling. We help another heart to breathe. And if this story touched a little piece of yours, it helps her reach someone who needs it. Because there are many women out there who still think they have to accept crumbs to feel loved. But the most curious thing is that Even after all this, there was still a part of me that was waiting for something. A gesture, a sign, and he came. But not Ashley's, nor Daniel. It was from someone I didn't even imagine, and it changed everything once again. Want to know who it was? So stay here with me. I don't need a walk on. And I want you with me, because even the calmest outcome can hide the biggest twist. The phone rang in the late afternoon, when I was already sitting on my porch with a cup of hot tea in my hands. It was Daniel. Oh, that sound of a tired, slurred voice. No, which I hadn't heard in years. Mom, I got a job. I arched my eyebrows, surprised, but kept calm. He took a deep breath before continuing. It's in the construction sector. I started as an assistant, you know, carrying material, cleaning the flower bed, helping wherever they ask. It's not glamorous, but I'm going to work. I kept quiet, watching the wind play with the leaves of the hydrangeas. He didn't say anything right away. For years, I tried to teach lessons, to demonstrate the value of effort, but they were always ignored. Now, finally, I learned. He was experiencing firsthand what it means to build something with his own sweat, and I felt a mixture of pride and relief. That's good, Daniel. I'll undidodam ashto. Im listening, seotao, ochinat sister ka. He sighed, as if that simple contact with reality had already weighed on his shoulders for decades. Mom, I never thought it would be so tiring, standing all day, carrying bags of cement, facing the heat, the rain, and still have to maintain concentration. Now, I understand a little of what you went through, and I am sorry for everything I didn't realize before. A lump formed in my throat, because the truth is, no matter how much I wanted to, I could never really make Daniel feel the life I led. I could tell, I could explain, I could educate, but only when one touches one's own effort is that understanding is born. And there he was, finally feeling what this sunny board was. Einzelne Artistot. Learning. Sweating. No. At that moment, I thought about how many of us only understand the value of something when life forces us to fight for it. And you, who are listening to me now, have you ever felt this weight? That moment when reality hits so hard that you can't ignore it anymore? If you've ever been through something like this, comment below and see how halfway. I know what it's like. Sometimes sharing this feeling helps to relieve the heart. Daniel continued, not in a firmer voice. No. It's strange. Mom, it's embarrassing to admit. Wow. But I miss understanding. I spent years dependent on you, thinking everything was right. And now, I can no longer count on your generosity alone. And no, it hurts, but it's fair. I smiled slightly, holding the cup tighter. I didn't promise anything. He did not say that he would reward, nor that he would diminish anything. I just heard. Because listening out calm in these moments is more powerful than any speech he needed to build alone, understand alone, and then wine a nice fall and get up alone. And, ironically, it started in the same industry that had taught me so much about responsibility and dignity decades ago. Over the next few days, Daniel told me details of the cold mornings, the sore muscles, the mistakes he had to correct on his own. Each story was a silent victory, a lesson absorbed without resistance. He began to value little things that had previously gone unnoticed. A self-paid coffee, a bus catching on time, the feeling of tiredness that comes after a day of honest work. One night, after coming back exhausted, he called me again. How? Mom, today I felt the weight of each day that you worked at the construction company. The smell of the cement, the dust, the pressure of not making mistakes. And I realized that I never saw it as it should. I took it all for granted. No, I just smiled on the other end of the line. We're not in town. I didn't need to say anything else. He was finally getting it, because the real lesson was not in the financial loss, nor in the threat of eviction. It was in the experience, the sensation, the sweat, and the responsibility of those who have to take care of their own lives. And at that moment, I realized something I want you to carry with me. Some lessons are only understood when you feel in your own skin. Life takes its turns, and what once seemed simple becomes immensely complex when truly experienced. It is as if suddenly the light comes on within us, showing the paths that we previously ignored. Daniel continued, Mom, thank you for not giving in sooner. Wow, for not making it easy, for making me face reality. I'm still an apprentice, but I feel like I finally started to move in the right direction. I took a deep breath. The feeling was strange. What the relief mixed with emotion. Oh, silent pride. No euphoria. No noisy celebration. Only the certainty that the cycle was beginning to break, that he would finally understand one time, respect, and, who knows, teach this to his own children in the future. But something inside me knew that the lesson was not finished, because the real turning point would not happen only to him. There were others involved, other truths that still needed to be faced, and the big reveal was about to happen. That phone call was just the first step. So I ask myself, and I let you reflect with me, to what extent do you have to lose to really understand? To what extent does life force us to grow, to take on responsibilities that have always been our own business? And, more importantly, who else will have to learn? What is your job? And in what way, before the cycle of pain and dependence ends? The answer, the answer, when it comes to stability at a church, I feel now is closer than I ever imagined. And it will change everything Daniel and I believed about family, respect, and dignity. The first morning in Asheville was unlike anything I experienced in the last 20 years. I opened the curtains of my new home, and the sunlight came in timidly, but enough to illuminate every corner of the small garden I now cultivated with my own hands. Hydrangeas, lavenders, and a few succulents I brought from Charleston brought the space to life, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Not the freedom to escape, but the freedom to exist for myself, without pressures, without expectations, without veiled demands. I sat on the porch with a hot cup of coffee, and for the first time in a long time, I was able to enjoy the guilt-free silence. At first, the feeling of being alone seemed strange to me. But it was not loneliness. It was a pause. I took a deep breath and realized that I could reconnect with parts of myself that had been hidden behind the needs of others. I took my old watercolor case, the one I hadn't seen in decades, and started painting. Each brushstroke reminded me of who I was before I became just the provider. The grandmother who always said yes, the mother who paid all the bills, and with each color applied to the paper, a part of my soul breathed again. Mornings have become ritual. Tea, newspaper, painting. In the afternoons, walks around the neighborhood, greeting neighbors and discovering small cafes that served the best blueberry muffin in town. Gradually, I got to know people my age who had their own stories of overcoming. A lady named Eleanor introduced me to a local reading group, and in the weekly meetings, I realized that each story told by these women had echoes of my own path. Losses, challenges, deferred dreams, but also resistance and quiet strength. One day, during one of these meetings, I met Thomas, a nice widower who frequented the same cafe before joining the group. We talked about books, memories, and small, everyday joys. There was no hurry, no expectation. Just genuine company. I smiled at myself, realizing that I could be open to new connections without having to fill in old gaps with past emotions. Life became light, even with all the ghosts of Charleston still echoing from time to time. Between emails, I received news from my grandchildren. Caroline would tell me about the new school, her discoveries in mathematics, and how she had been elected class representative. Josh sent photos of the football team and small victories that he celebrated with enthusiasm. They both talked about missing me, and I responded with affectionate messages full of love. But without haste, they needed to learn, just like their parents, that every achievement comes with effort and dedication. I could guide, see, love, and participate, but without interfering with their growth. In the garden, one afternoon, I sat in the rocking chair and just watched the sky change color, from blue to orange in the late afternoon. Now, I thought about Charleston, about my old life, about the bills paid, about the negotiations with Daniel and Ashley, and I realized that the weight I was carrying had been replaced by lightness. I no longer had to control anything or anyone. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. The respect I sought so much would not come from manipulations or demands. but from the dignity that I silently maintained every day. The weeks passed, and the reconstruction routine continued. Painting, reading, coffee with neighbors, long walks. Each step was an affirmation. I exist for myself, no, and not as a reflection of the approval of others. Life showed me that happiness is not what you give or receive, but the space you create for yourself to breathe and grow. Thomas became a constant friend, but there was never a rush. There was never a need to define or label. It was the first time in decades that I had lived without haste, without external expectations, just with the simple truth that I deserved to exist for myself. One day, in my small painting studio, I felt something different, a feeling of quiet accomplishment. My hands stained with ink, the paper full of colors, the tea still hot next to it, and the light coming in through the window. Everything seemed to conspire to remind me that I survived, that I rebuilt myself. Wow. And it was at that moment that I understood. True wealth was not in the money I gave or the control I exercised. It was in my ability to rebuild my own life, to redefine my limits, to choose my paths. And as I looked at my grandchildren's emails, I realized something I want you to carry with you, even after years of pain, disappointment, and injustice. It is possible to get back on your feet, chart new paths, and discover that emotional freedom is more valuable than any material good. I felt it in every gesture, in every little detail of my daily life in Asheville. But even with all this peace, a glimmer of expectation remained. I knew that life still had something in store. One last twist, a message that would still arrive from Charleston, an echo of everything I left behind. What would it be? Who would bring that news? And how would it fit into this new life I was beginning to build? For now, I just smiled, savoring the tranquility I had gained, but aware that the next chapter could change everything again, and I was ready to face it with the same dignity that has guided me here. I sit at my desk, in front of the notebook that has accompanied me for years, and begin to write with a trembling but firm hand. Well, I did not take everything from them out of revenge. I took it out of self-love. The words seemed to float on paper. When not tongue should pick you, loaded with decades of repressed feelings, of choices made with patience, but also with pain. For 15 years, I supported an entire family, fearing loneliness more than anything else. I paid mortgages, utility bills, school fees, cars, clothes, travel, all without ever expecting a sincere thank you. And for years, I kept silent, accepting disapproving looks, fake smiles, and sarcastic comments. I remember the nights when, after dinner, I would sit alone in the Charleston kitchen, cleaning the pots and listening to the heavy silence of the house that was once full of laughter. I thought of God many times, in silent murmurs of gratitude that I still had strength, that I still had a heart that had not completely hardened in the face of ingratitude. I asked him if I was being weak for allowing so much, or strong for continuing to try to protect those who, deep down, would never value me. As I write, I reflect on the versions of myself that have died over the years. The young and determined businesswoman, Margaret, who arrived in Charleston at the age of 20 with Hank, full of dreams and ambitions. To Margaret, a devoted mother, who devoted herself to Daniel without measuring efforts. To Margaret, who said yes for fear of rejection, of losing the affection that always seemed to slip through her fingers. Each of them survived, but left fragments behind, like fallen leaves on a road that I traveled silently. Now, looking back on my life, I understand something that took me years to accept. Love and generosity cannot be confused with a duty to serve. True self-love does not scream, does not demand applause. He simply chooses to exist without allowing anyone to steal his dignity. And that's what I did when I put the key on the table. When I sent the eviction papers. When I canceled the credit cards. It was not anger, nor cruelty. It was preservation. I close my eyes for a moment and imagine Daniel and Ashley, each confronting their own responsibility. Their flaws and choices. I think of my grandchildren, Caroline and Josh, and I feel a deep peace in realizing that they can still learn, that they are not lost, that the seed of dignity and self-effort can still flourish, and me, am whole for the first time in a long time, whole, without resentments that corrode my soul, without fear of being manipulated. I remember every night I felt small, every time a sarcastic comment or an omission made me doubt my worth. But those memories, painful as they are, now serve as the foundation for the woman I have become. I no longer need to prove anything to anyone, nor justify my past generosity. Every penny spent, every gesture of care, every patient word was an act of love, not submission. As I write, I feel a lightness that I haven't known for a long time. There is no regret, only gratitude for having had the courage to act. The Margaret who sacrificed herself, who allowed herself to be used, who silenced pain for fear of losing ties, now looks back with understanding and compassion for herself. Life was hard, but I survived. And more than that, I learned, I taught, and I finally respected myself. I close the notebook, take a deep breath, and look out the window of my house in Asheville. The afternoon sun reflects on the leaves of the hydrangeas, and I feel that everything around me, every corner of the house, every color, every aroma, confirms me. I am alive. I am free. I am whole. There is no need for revenge, no need for resentment. What remains is the clarity that every choice made, no matter how difficult it was, brought me here. And as the breeze touches my face, I think about the life I still have ahead of me, the new paths I can take, the experiences I can live. I understand that true freedom is not only not depending financially on anyone, but living without fear of being who I am, without emotional ties that previously bound me. And I ask myself, with a silent smile, why then will Daniel and Ashley ever fully grasp the depth of what they've lost? Or is the biggest lesson for me, and not for them? What I do know is that, as of today on, my story is mine. Every day is mine to write. Every choice is mine to make. And every breath is mine to feel with dignity. And then, as the sun sets and the city slowly falls asleep, I realize that there is no more weight on the heart. Every tear past, every sleepless night, every feeling of powerlessness was transformed into wisdom, into silent strength, into freedom conquered. For the first time, I can look to the future without fear, knowing that my life finally belongs to me. But then, even with all this peace, a question still echoes in my mind: what to do with those who insist on not learning, who continue to be stuck in their own mistakes, who have not yet realized the importance of respect and responsibility. The answer is still unclear, and perhaps it is the next step that will define not only my peace, but also the possibility of true change for those who are yet to learn. I sit on the porch of my Asheville home, watching the sunset dye the mountains of the Blue Ridge Parkway gold and purple, and I feel a deep peace that has long been unknown to me. Daniel and Ashley have finally found their ways. He now works at a small construction company in North Charleston, proud of the effort he never appreciated before, and she began to learn, little by little, that life demands responsibility and not just ease. Caroline and Josh thrive at their new school, more aware of the value of work and respect, and tell me often not to ask for money, but to share their accomplishments and small everyday moments, reminding me that true love is built with presence and guidance, not with ease. I, Margaret Whitmore, at 70, widowed, widowed, one nice widowed, retired businesswoman, and now entirely master of my life, can finally breathe guilt-free, weightless, without having to buy approval or affection. The silence that once weighed down became comfort, and each difficult choice brought me to this moment of fullness. The great lesson that I carry, and that I hope will resonate with those who listen to me, is simple but profound. To love is not to lose oneself for the other, nor to annul oneself in order to maintain ties. Love, respect, and dignity are limits that are built and protected. Generosity is not passivity, and emotional freedom is priceless. I have learned that maintaining my own integrity and peace is the greatest gift I can give to myself and, indirectly, to those who once depended on me. It is not revenge, nor grudge. It is care for one's own heart. Every wrinkle on my face, every memory I keep, carries this silent wisdom, and now I can share it without fear, without haste, just with the tranquility of someone who has overcome his own fear of being alone. And that's why I want to thank you, who have been with me so far, listening to every detail of this story that could be just a story of pain, but which became a lesson and freedom. Your time and attention are precious. And if this story touched your heart, leave your like, as if it were a hug that warms this channel and strengthens our connection. Sign up, as if you're accepting my invitation to come back for the next cafe, where we'll continue to talk, laugh, and reflect on lives that carry stories similar to mine. In the comments, tell us which city you are watching from. I want to feel our community form, to know that I am talking to people who also feel, who have also learned from time and silence. Activate the bell. This Traube. I'm Sweden. So you don't miss it when the coffee's ironed again, and you can accompany me in each new story I bring with care and emotion. And before I say goodbye, I want to leave you with a little secret, a bridge to what comes next. The next story that will appear on the screen is as intense and full of twists and turns as this one, with a protagonist who, like me, has learned that sometimes life requires quiet courage to regain her dignity. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, one that's at hackled by Shokunjiri. Each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another amazing story, and allow yourself to feel, learn, and be inspired again, because life goes on, and there are always new lessons waiting to transform us.